Aqui. Aqui. Aqui, ó.
Here.
Aqui, aqui, ó.
Here.
Aqui, ó.
Let's
Aqui,
go.
foi aqui, ó. Aqui, ó. Uau. Foi aqui, ó. Oh. Foi aqui, aqui, ó. Se eles morreram.
The North American Air Defense Command, or NORAD, was established in 1958 to provide early warning and defense against Soviet bombers and missiles. However, it soon began monitoring skies globally. Early on January 13, 1996, NORAD alerted Brazilian air defense about an unidentified object entering Earth's atmosphere, about 200 miles northeast of Sao Paulo. Minutes later, the object crashed near Varginha. The Brazilian Army and Air Force rushed to the site, but arrived too late. The craft had been seen, and its occupants had vanished. Over the following days, events unfolded that would alter the lives of the survivors in the area.
Da região.
Nada temos a esconder.
Pelo que eles estavam fazendo no dia do acontecimento? Trabalhando. Em prol do exército, em prol da nação. Isso tem como ser comprovado? Para quê? Para a imprensa. Por quê? Porque não se quer provar os fatos? Não tenho que provar. Tudo que eu tinha a dizer foi dito.
Varginha is a city in the southern part of Brazil's Minas Gerais state, with a population of about 135,000 people. Its economy is largely agricultural, with coffee, corn, and soybeans being the primary crops. Yoreco and Orolina de Freitas owned a nearby farm. Early in the morning before sunrise, Orolina heard the cows acting up and saw a cigar-shaped object hovering above the pasture. She called her husband Yoreco. The object, about the size of a school minibus and resembling a submarine, was emitting white smoke and struggling to maneuver. They watched it for an hour until it disappeared over a ridge. On the other side of the ridge, Carlos de Sousa was driving to the airport when he heard a muffled rumbling. He stopped, realizing the sound came from a cigar-shaped craft about 300 feet in the air, losing altitude. The craft had no windows and a long crack with white smoke pouring out. Carlos thought this was unusual because smoke from a fire or engine failure would be black. The craft was sputtering and struggling to stay airborne. Carlos followed it until it crashed. He found a dirt road leading to the wreckage and saw debris spread across a large area. At first, he thought it was a small plane, but soon realized it was not. The air was thick with a stench of ammonia and sulfur, making Carlos wrap his shirt around his mouth. Debris included lightweight metal pieces that resembled aluminum foil. As Carlos approached the larger debris to search for survivors, a convoy of military vehicles arrived, establishing a perimeter and ordering him away. Soldiers with raised guns made it clear he had to leave. Carlos, frightened, complied and went for coffee to calm himself. Two men in dark suits then approached him. They knew personal details about him and ordered him to forget everything he saw. Terrified, Carlos agreed. The men left in a black car without license plates. Carlos kept the incident secret for 26 years. Meanwhile, the Brazilian military collected the wreckage and searched for survivors who had already made their way into town. Just a few hours after the crash, local authorities began receiving unusual reports from residents. Around 8 a.m., a college student reported seeing a creature with dark brown, oily skin crouched in an alley near a local park. It had very small hands with 3 long fingers, stood between 4 and 5 feet tall, and was hairless and unclothed. A few blocks away, 3 young women, Lillian, Valkyria, and Katya, were on their way to the park and took a shortcut through a vacant lot. There, they spotted a creature about 4 feet tall with a large head, 3 bumps or ridges on its head, and huge red eyes. Its skin was brown and shiny, and it had a thin, frail body. The girls were paralyzed with fear when the creature looked at them. Despite its silence, they sensed it was scared, in pain, and in need of help. Terrified, they fled to Katya's house, telling her mother they had seen a demon. Katya's mother discovered a strange footprint with 3 long toes. An artist later created a famous sketch based on their description. Although the creature was gone, a strong ammonia odor lingered. Katya's mother reported that the smell persisted for days. A few hours later, military policemen Eric Lopes and Marco Shiraz were patrolling when a small humanoid creature with dark skin darted across the street. Marco apprehended it and then took it to the hospital, where it reportedly died almost immediately. Marco soon felt unwell, describing a greasy sensation on his skin and a persistent ammonia smell. His condition deteriorated over the next 2 weeks, leading to his hospitalization and intensive care. Doctors were baffled by his condition and eventually determined that an autopsy was unnecessary. Marco died at 23 from an unknown cause, and his body was buried quickly to protect public health. His blood tests revealed 8% of unknown toxic substances. This was the first death related to the Varginha UFO incident, but not the last. The fire department received several calls about a wild animal near the park. 4 firemen were dispatched and found 5 civilians watching the creature near a steep embankment leading to dense woods. The creature emitted a buzzing sound and a strong ammonia and sulfur odor. It took the firemen 2 hours to capture it due to its erratic movements and the challenging terrain. Once captured in a net, a military truck from a nearby base arrived, and soldiers were seen handling 2 black bags, one squirming and the other still. The bags were loaded into the truck, which sped away, and the area was sealed off by military vehicles, restricting civilian access. Shortly after, a section of the regional hospital was locked down. 10 military and police vehicles arrived, and a black body bag was unloaded and taken to the radiology department for x-rays. The technician on duty reported that the room was filled with nervous doctors, police, and military personnel. He was ordered to take x-rays of the bag without opening it. After the x-rays were taken, the military took both the images and the body bag. The technician never saw the x-ray films and was instructed to keep the details confidential for national security reasons. The military left with the x-rays and body bag, but the ammonia and sulfur odor persisted. The hospital section remained closed for several days as the cleaning staff struggled to remove the smell. Additionally, one of the firemen who helped capture the creature died a few weeks later from an unknown toxic poisoning. Senior military officials took strict measures to ensure silence about the incident. 50 doctors and hospital staff were placed under non-disclosure agreements and were told the whole event was merely a training exercise. They were threatened with imprisonment if they spoke up about it. Soldiers were reminded of their duty to national security and warned that discussing the incident could be considered treason. These tactics effectively kept the details under wraps, and after the military convoys left, no new information emerged about the truck's destination, its contents, or the individuals involved. However, 25 years later, a witness came forward with unexpected details. In the documentary Moment of Contact by filmmaker James Fox, a soldier who was closely involved finally shared his story. Though he chose to remain anonymous and was known as Military X, an old local news report from Varginha revealed his name. To protect his identity, we'll call him Raul. Raul was part of the convoy transporting the creature to the hospital. He saw the alien inside a box, covered but visible enough to note that it was between 4 and 5 feet tall. He saw its foot, which was dark red or brown and oily, with only 3 toes, clearly not human. After leaving the hospital, the convoy went to the ASA military base about 20 miles from Varginha. There, Raul and another soldier were summoned to the base commander's office, where they were questioned about what they saw. Raul was terrified and unsure how to respond. He initially described it as a burnt man, but his commanding officer corrected him, saying he had seen something supernatural. Raul was warned that revealing what he saw would have severe consequences. The next day at the base was unusually busy with Navy trucks and helicopters, and there was a heightened activity and tension. Raul and the convoy were then sent to a SpaceX Army base in Campinas, around 2 hours away. Raul did not know the fate of the creature, but he heard rumors that later proved true. Jose Manuel Fernandez, an air traffic controller at the base during the time, reported that 2 helicopters left for Varginha and returned with an unknown load, which he thought was a rescue mission. Later, a large plane arrived without proper authorization to land. Jose's supervisors instructed him to permit the landing. The plane took on boxes and left quickly. Jose was informed it was a secret mission, and he was only told what he needed to know. He referred to the plane as a USAF plane, which is a Brazilian term for a USAF, or United States Air Force plane. Dona Luisa, Katya's mother, experienced a troubling visit from 4 men who forced their way into her home. Described as neatly dressed foreigners in dark suits, one carried a clipboard and another a briefcase. They offered her tens of thousands of dollars in exchange for convincing the girls to retract their story and claim it was fabricated. Dona Luisa refused, insisting the girls had indeed seen something and should not be labeled as liars. The men became increasingly frustrated, and Dona Luisa, frightened, threatened to call the police. The men eventually left abruptly. Another well-respected family reported seeing an unusual object in the sky on the evening the aliens were captured. They described it as a metallic, bus-sized circular object that hovered a few hundred feet above their house. The object was rotating quickly, but made no sound. It moved slowly back and forth, as if searching for something. After they reported the sighting, 2 men visited them, asking many questions and speaking with the family for hours. Before leaving, they told the family, "What you saw didn't happen, and this conversation never happened." They implied that speaking publicly could have serious consequences. The family maintains their story, but they have refused to disclose their names. Eric Lopes, a key figure in this case, was Marco Shiraz's partner. Shiraz, who died after coming into contact with the alien, is one of the few remaining individuals who can confirm the incident. Lopes was present when the alien was captured, transported, and carried into the hospital. For 25 years, he has remained silent about the event. When James Fox and his team tried to interview him, Lopes was so agitated that he threatened to shoot them if they didn't leave. The Varginha UFO incident, often referred to as the Brazilian Roswell, is considered one of the most compelling UFO and alien cases in history. Despite the release of the documentary Moment of Contact, which has reignited interest in the case, the veracity of the story remains debated. There's no physical evidence to support the events. The case relies solely on witness testimony, which has been inconsistent over time. Some documentaries claim that witnesses had no financial incentive to lie, but this is not entirely accurate. Reports indicate that some witnesses were compensated, and the girls who initially reported the creature demanded substantial payments for interviews. Initially, there was no mention of a UFO or alien before the girls' story was publicized. Their reports prompted other witnesses to come forward, describing creatures similar to what the girls had seen. This raises questions about whether these new witnesses had seen the same being or were influenced by the earlier accounts. The girls themselves did not initially identify the creatures as an alien. They thought it resembled a demon. At the time, local interest was focused on a cryptid called the Chupacabra. A local UFO researcher later suggested the creature might be an alien. The official explanation posits that the girls might have encountered a local man known as Mudino, whose real name is Luis Antonio de Paula. Mudino, who is mentally and physically disabled, was known to spend time crouching and observing small objects. He lived in the area where the girls saw the creature, and during a major storm that flooded parts of the town, he might have appeared covered in mud, potentially frightening the girls. However, the girls maintained that they would not mistake Mudino for an alien. Their initial description of the creature as a demon aligns with their later accounts. The discrepancies in their statements could be due to the passage of time and the influence of various narratives. Regarding the bribe offered to Katya's mother, Donna Luisa, she initially mentioned that the men implied a future payment. This detail includes a briefcase of cash, but it's unclear whether she misremembered or if her story was influenced by the Men in Black lore. Additionally, weather conditions would likely make it difficult to see alien footprints in the mud. Witnesses' reports have varied significantly, with some witnesses later denying their earlier statements, while others' accounts do not fit the timeline. The couple who first saw the UFO reported it happening a week earlier than the actual events. This inconsistency might stem from faulty memory, but emotional memories are often the most vivid. People who experience significant events, like the JFK assassination or 9/11, tend to recall those moments with clarity. Regarding Marco Shiraz, the young officer who allegedly died after touching the alien, there are several inaccuracies to the commonly circulated story. Contrary to the reports of sudden illness, Marco was known to have cysts on his arm that were documented well before the alien incident. His involvement in the UFO case only emerged later, initially through his sister. Initially, she was uncertain about his role, but her current claims are firm. The Brazilian military's extensive report, which exceeds 1,000 pages, states that Marco was not present that night. It also indicates that the military vehicles in the area were part of a routine training exercise, and that the hospital wing was closed for the installation of new cardiac equipment. The report further details that what was perceived as an alien was actually a dwarf couple seeking medical assistance, and the so-called body bag was a recently exhumed cadaver from a police investigation. Many of these explanations sound plausible, but others, like the pregnant dwarf, seem less convincing. This suggests that parts of the story may be a cover-up, with the military possibly altering records to obscure the truth. General Lima's behavior, which may seem evasive, has led to suspicions of a cover-up. The interpretation of the events largely depends on whether one is inclined to be a skeptic or a believer. James Fox's documentary, Moment of Contact, features compelling interviews with witnesses, including local residents, doctors, and military personnel. Some witnesses, like Marco de Souza, who discovered the craft, are visibly emotional, adding credibility to their accounts. Eric Lopes, who could potentially confirm or refute the entire case, remains a key figure. As the driver who transported the alien, Lopes' testimony could definitively clarify the situation. His reluctance to speak and his aggressive stance towards those probing him only add to the mystery. If Lopes were to confirm the alien encounter, it would challenge the official narrative and potentially rewrite history. For now, the Brazilian military and government continue to deny any involvement or cover-up. If they are indeed collaborating with the United States on this matter, they might be following well-established practices of secrecy. The whole story has left many with more questions than answers. Despite the conflicting accounts and the mysterious elements, the Varginha UFO incident has become a pivotal case in UFO lore. With so many layers of secrecy, conflicting reports, and personal testimonies, it's clear that this story has not been fully uncovered. What we know for sure is that the official narrative often leaves gaps and inconsistencies that fuel speculation. The witnesses' stories vary, and with time, memories can become less reliable. Add to that the pressures of secrecy and potential government cover-ups, and it's no wonder that this case remains so debated. The presence of high-level military officials and mysterious aircraft only deepens the intrigue. Eric Lopes, as one of the key figures who could potentially validate or disprove the accounts, remains a crucial piece of this puzzle. His silence and reluctance to speak only adds to the complexity of this case. Whether he's holding back for personal reasons or if there's a deeper, more complex reason remains unknown. The Brazilian government and military have maintained their stance, dismissing claims of extraterrestrial encounters. Their official explanations, while plausible, don't entirely address all the anomalies reported. The mix of mundane explanations and extraordinary claims creates a narrative that's difficult to fully accept or refute. As long as there are unanswered questions and differing perspectives, the Varginha UFO incident will continue to capture public interest. It stands as a reminder of how complex and elusive the truth can be in matters involving high-level secrecy and extraordinary claims. The search for answers continues, with each new piece of information potentially altering the story as we know it. Now let's hear your thoughts on this topic. Please share your perspective in the comments below. Thanks for watching.